One of the things that I want to do, we were talking about earlier, because I see some of you stayed from the last session, and thank you so very much for doing this. I want to share with you kind of my journey as I came into this business. And remember when I started the last conversation by saying this is like a real life boardwalk empire? When I first got into this industry in 1992, I got shot at. I had people throw things at me because the prohibitionists, they all thought that I was just trying to get all their kids high and hooked on drugs. And I tell them, no, it was the opioid doctors that overprescribed when your 12-year-old got their wisdom teeth taken out. So I've been on the front lines for a long, long time. I wanted to bring a little sizzle reel so you can kind of get an idea of what my world is like. It's a totally different world than anyone would ever expect. So if you can indulge me for about a few minutes on here, you'll get an idea of some of the things that I've gone through and some of the things that you will go through, because no matter what part of this industry that you are in, whether you're an attorney, an accountant, a grower, whatever you are, a nurse, you have to learn how to personally brand yourself. That's the only way to do it. So let's play the tape. Sound. Okay, we'll have to wait for sound. If this doesn't work, I'm going to be really disappointed. Here we go. Can you turn it up just a little more?
She's known as the Martha Stewart of marijuana.
I grow it, I smoke it, I cook with it.
But is she the queen of cannabis or a snake oil salesman in this booming $47 billion industry?
I was on end-of-life care
Let's go inside.
to save my life.
Now, the biggest celebrity and pop culture news delivered to you 24/7. It's the Insider to your reality. Straight ahead, I'm with the Martha Stewart of marijuana. Why her health scare was a blessing in disguise.
No politician, even if they thought it was a good idea.
That is not a cigarette Zach Galifianakis pulled out on real time, Bill Maher.
Well, I think we officially all know now where he stands on the great marijuana legalization debate. I believe he recently sat down with the lady who is all for it.
Her name is Cheryl Shuman. She's a fascinating woman. It was a cancer diagnosis that led to her second career as a medical marijuana conspirator, a $47 billion industry, by the way. Many have criticized her. They've called her a con artist, a snake oil salesman, a drug addict, but she shakes them all off. Tonight, the Insider investigates the Beverly Hills cannabis queen.
I love marijuana. I grow it, I smoke it, I vaporize it, I cook with it, I eat it raw.
Whatever you call her, the queen of cannabis or the Martha Stewart of marijuana, one word defines Cheryl Shuman.
Listen, yeah, boy, and you keep getting back up. It's crazy.
When I got into this, I was dying. I was $600,000 in debt. I lost almost all my hair. It was not pretty.
But people wait, much better.
Cheryl was born into extreme poverty in a tobacco farming family in the Appalachian Mountains in Ohio. That's her CBS documentary from the 1960s. Those early roots seeded in her a relentless drive to succeed. And in 2006, after a successful business career, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and given just months to live.
I was rushed into emergency surgery. They did a hysterectomy, removed ovaries, uterus, part of my colon, part of my bladder.
The cancer had spread.
Yeah.
But there was a blessing in that cancer.
Yes.
The blessing came in the form of a drug which in 1996 in California had been approved for medical use. Marijuana. Cheryl used oil derived from the plant to alleviate her symptoms and made a remarkable recovery.
You reach a point where you'll do almost anything to have one last day with the people that you love and care about.
Cheryl began growing the plant and using her Hollywood connections, she started a Beverly Hills collective which caters to high society, literally. Her clients, A-list actors, agents, lawyers, and doctors. How did you conceive this? And you're just recuperating from cancer, and you thought of this spur of the moment?
You know, to me, it was just obvious. It was just obvious because the luxury market, the affluent market hadn't been tapped yet. So I was like, let's start doing mansion parties and going back to the old speakeasy concept where we have great parties, DJs, chefs, they come in, it's great.
It's couture cannabis.
It is couture cannabis.
And the couture cannabis business is booming. Cheryl has grown her collective to include over 1,700 private members, all holders of medical marijuana cards as required by California.
Hi there, it's Cheryl. We're out at the greenhouse. Just wanted to share with you. It's really beautiful, as you can see.
But her ambitions are much grander than cannabis-themed parties. She's building an empire, buoyed by over $600 million in venture capital money. She's also the executive director of Moms for Marijuana and has become an outspoken advocate for legalization.
This is the very first chance in our lifetimes that we can change the course of history and show by living example that the American dream is still possible.
Call it the top combo, and one woman is planning to be front and center.
But at the end of the day, you take a look at yourself and say, what does my life really stand for? And when I see now that there's a good chance that I'm going to go down in history as the woman who led the overturn of cannabis prohibition, that's what I'm proud of.
Right now, recreational use of marijuana is legal in 4 states: Colorado, Washington, Alaska, and Oregon. Nevada could be next. Cheryl's already got her sights set on Vegas, where she plans to build a cannabis facility.
Great. Okay, so let's go to the PowerPoint. So I wanted you guys to kind of get an idea of what it's like. The industry in and of itself, no matter what market you're in, whether it's Israel, Canada, the US, etc., most people have lived a secret life of their cannabis consumption. You know, when they're moms, they're getting the tissue paper and they're blowing it out the bathroom window and everything. And when I had my experience personally with cannabis and it saved my life, I mean, that's when you have a come to God meeting. And it's like, you know what, I couldn't understand because I'm not a doctor. I am not a scientist. I am a patient, I am a businesswoman, and I'm an investor. Those are the things that I'm good at. But I knew that something was happening to my body, and I knew that I was getting better. But I couldn't explain it. And you know what? Because there are no clinical trials, I couldn't prove it. So I had to deal with all of these people. First, the prohibitionists that were like, that woman, that Beverly Hills woman, all she wants to do is turn all our kids into drug addicts. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. What I want to do is see children who are suffering from epilepsy and Dravet syndrome and having 300 seizures a day. I want to see those kids have the ability to use a drop of CBD oil and stop those seizures. And we have a right to fight for those children. That is not turning a child into a drug addict. I will tell you, in the times that I've been shot at, literally, those were mostly from what we call guerrilla growers, black market growers, because I was out there, you know, mom of 2 beautiful girls, good business out there saying, we've got to legalize this. We have to figure out a way to regulate it, to make sure it's clean so that we know what we're getting. If you had to go to the streets, you don't know what you're getting. Your drug dealer on the street doesn't test the product. So if you want to have a good experience, you have to go the right route. And to me, it's like once I came out of the closet, there was no going back. I was out, and it's just like being gay. Once you're out of the closet, you can't go back in. So what I decided is I sat my girls down, and I looked at this because with my work, I do a lot of work in television. I'm a regular on CNN, CNBC, Fox Business News, all about cannabis. Same thing with Investor Intel up here. I do a lot of work with them with cannabis. And when I was looking at the plant itself and the history of it, I was like, hey, it's a cute little plant. It's a female plant. It's really adorable, actually, when you look at it. And any of you guys who have grown, I know you're out there playing Pink Floyd music to your plants. They respond better, right? But the way I looked at it was, this is a rebranding campaign. Cannabis was a great little plant. It just got a bad reputation by some really, really rich old white men who, William Randolph Hearst, he wanted to keep his forestry for paper. You know, the alcohol prohibitionists, they wanted to keep all the alcohol and intoxifying substances for themselves. So what they did is they took it out of the pharmacopoeia, where it had been in there for years and years and years and was prescribed for more ailments than all of the pharmaceutical drugs combined. So I look at this and I'm like, it's a rebranding campaign. All we have to do is put a new face on it. Instead of that stigma, that negative stereotype that everyone associates with it, whether they call it the Cheech and Chong syndrome or the stoner syndrome or whatever it is, it's really about rebranding. And so I sat my girls down and I said, I'm going to come out of the closet in a very big way. I'm going to use the celebrity connections that I have because I know that almost every single celebrity in Hollywood loves cannabis, and shocking, they're not all medical marijuana users, I know. But let's face it, cannabis is a wellness tool. It makes us feel better, no matter what. If you're having a bad day and you use your vaporizer or vape pen, it makes you feel better, and we should be able to do that. So in doing this, I basically started calling my friends. And when I got through my cancer treatment and everything, I think I told you, I called my best friend, she's a casting director, and I told her, I said, I survived, I started a pot farm, and I'm gonna change the world. And she's like, you're high right now, right? And of course I was. No, but anyway, let's go to the next slide. That was the cover of Adweek. And I'm very proud of that because that was the 10-year anniversary of Adweek, and they were honoring 3 people in America, specifically women, who had built the most powerful brands. It was Kris Jenner, Ariana Huffington, and little old Cheryl Shuman from Appalachia. And I was like, are you sure you want me? I mean, I'm a pot person. And they're like, that's exactly why we want you. So it was important because the Adweek cover started to legitimize the plant. And then I called my old friend Katie Couric. Katie and I used to work on the Today Show together. And I told her my personal story, and if you know Katie, you'll know that she lost her husband to colon cancer, and she's very, very active in the community. And when I called Katie and I said, you're not gonna believe this, because I'm one of those people, I don't really drink, I've never had a cigarette, I'll occasionally, I tasted scotch for the first time the other day. I was like, wow, it was like, kerosene. But I tried it, And so I called Katie and I said, you aren't gonna believe this story. And I said, I had cancer. I started using cannabis, and it saved my life. She said, what the hell is cannabis? Didn't even know what it was. I said, marijuana. She goes, you? Marijuana? That's crazy. And so I told her the story, and the little blonde there to the right, that's my daughter, Amy. I call her my mini-me. That young lady stood by me at every single point during my treatment. She took time off from college, and we decided to do this together, that not every cannabis consumer looks like Cheech and Chong. And I wanted my children, no matter when I died, if I made it through the March 19th deadline that they said I'd be dead by, I wanted my kids to be proud of me. Sounds like a simple thing, but I really wanted them to be proud of me. And for me, I'm 58 now. This is a legacy project for me. This will be the last thing that I do in my lifetime. And when I say that I literally want to change the world, that's not a grandiose goal. I want to see people have jobs that they desperately need. I want to see these cities that have infrastructure problems. And I want to see people of color who've been jailed at a rate of 10 times higher than rich white people. They need to be let out of prison, and they need to be able to get jobs like everybody else and have a life. So Katie and I talked, we did this great segment, and that's when I first met Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Next slide. Next. Okay, we'll flip through that. We'll have to go through the next one. Okay, so then, I was very fortunate in that everybody loved my story. I was a little hillbilly kid. I grew up without running water or electricity until I was 14 years old, and I worked on the tobacco farm, so I'm really good at growing things, and that's how I paid my way through private school. And so then I started reaching out to all of the people who had covered my story, because they called me the real Beverly Hillbilly, and I really was. I was like a real Beverly Hillbilly. I looked exactly like the Beverly Hillbilly TV show, with the big hair and the whole 9 yards. But I started talking to my friends at Forbes, at Wall Street Journal, and showing them the research that I had found in Israel, and explaining that to them the difference in what cannabis really was, So we started educating them. So Forbes, Marijuana Venture, next slide, please. We'll go through these really quick. Okay, growing green gold. This was the game changer. How many people know who Dr. Raphael Mechoulam is? Okay, this is a man you should write down, you should research him. Without Dr. Raphael Mechoulam at the University of Jerusalem, we would not have legal cannabis anywhere. He is the scientist that back in the 1960s discovered the different chemical breakdown components of the plant and what they do, and he did it under the supervision of a pharmaceutical company, so it's real, folks. And he's known it all along since the 60s, and when I needed help, I basically sent out an SOS call on my video diary on YouTube. And Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, I'm there in his lab, sent for me. He saved my life. And he introduced me to the Tikkun Olam group. That's their gardens. Those are the medicinal marijuana gardens in Israel. And just so you understand, Israel was ground zero at that point. They were the only ones that could grow legally, that the government not only supported, but the government is the one that actually sells the product there. Next slide, please. Okay, in the United States, we're moving at warp speed. You guys know this. I mean, it's been going fast, 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 until President Trump came in and Jeff Sessions rescinded the Cole memo. Now we have zero protection. So all of those people who put their life savings into their businesses, they are at risk right now of losing everything. And that's why you, who live here in Canada, have the opportunity of a lifetime, because you don't have to deal with any of that. Your great Prime Minister, who's super cute, Justin Trudeau, is, I mean, I think he's a hero because he is paving the way for you guys to lead and dominate on an international scale. And he supports women, and he supports this plan. Next. Okay, next. That's just the gardens. You don't need to see that. Okay, so one of the things that we did is this rebranding campaign. And this was one of my favorite appearances because it was Stuart Varney. And when you're in the studio room, you can only hear through the IFB. And you have to, you know they're going to cut to you, so you're like, right, I know you're coming to me and everything. And so he puts me on, and you know, Fox is not really friendly to cannabis people. I learned that pretty fast. But there was a 2-second delay, right? And so I'm hearing him, and he's like, ladies and gentlemen, we have Cheryl Shuman, the Martha Stewart of marijuana, who's here to tell us about her members-only marijuana club. And I'm like, And then he comes on in that 2-second delay, and he goes, isn't it true that you're the one that gave yourself that name, and you're nothing more than a glorified self-promoter out there trying to convert teenagers? And I'm like, that's 100% correct. And I said, I used that moniker because the media gave it to me. It's catchy. The Martha Stewart of marijuana, and that's why you invited me on the show. And by the way, Stuart, thank you so much for having me. I'm really having a great time. And he cracked up, and then I became a regular on his show. Next. So anyone can be converted. Then I started reaching out to all of my friends in the industry. In your industry, what you're going to have to focus on are key opinion leaders, influencers, whether they be social media, politicians, or doctors, or scientists, or whatever. And I started reaching out to every single one of them. Yeah, it's Bill Maher at the top, Joe Rogan, Danny Glover. I knew they all smoked pot, and I'm like, we have to start a movement. We have the opportunity to change this, and people, all they have to do is tell the truth, you know, so people stop going to jail. Next slide. Then Melissa Etheridge, she got in on the game. She now has her own brand of products, which is a cannabis-infused wine. Next. Okay, basically what we're doing by doing all these mainstream appearances, you'll see this is Good Morning America, CNN with Pierce Brosnan, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. I've had the good fortune of helping him produce every single one of his weeds specials, which I believe have been instrumental in changing the course of history, because once Dr. Sanjay Gupta came out and said, I was wrong, this is a medicine, and we need to research it, that's when there was a big kickstart. Do you remember how everyone started talking about CBD and Charlotte's Web and the little girl that had the seizures? That was a big turning point for all of us. Next slide, please. Okay, The View. Whoopi Goldberg and I have known each other for about 35 years. I used to be her optician back in the day, and I made all of her glasses for her. And she loves weed. She absolutely loves it. She has her own product now and everything, but it was funny because the media came out and did a story, and she calls me, and she's like, girl, is that you smoking pot on TV? I'm like, yeah, how are you doing? She goes, I want to get you on The View. Barbara Walters wants to interview you. I'm like, great. So we went on there, and I have to tell you something. It was really, really cool because by the end of that segment with Barbara Walters, who I was terrified about meeting, you know, she actually said, you know what, you should run for Congress. I said, I'm going to. So anyway, next slide. The point I'm trying to make is all of these exposures, see, in the US, people identify with celebrities. And it may not be fair, it may not be right, it may be just doggone silly. But the bottom line is when a celebrity's doing something and they're cool, whether it's right or wrong, people will follow them. That's why they have these huge multi-million followers in Twitter and Instagram and so forth and so on. So then you started to see people like literally becoming more and more comfortable. Rihanna is famous for taking pictures with weed. And with you guys, you have to find people who are good influencers in your markets. You're going to want to focus on the medical marijuana, not the recreational. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, Michael Phelps. Who knows who Michael Phelps is? Okay. The winningest Olympic athlete in history. And guess what? He likes bongs, you know? So anyone that gives me that argument that cannabis makes you lazy and no good, I always go to the Michael Phelps thing. And I have to say, I think he's a true inspiration. The other thing that we have to start thinking about is our athletes, our NFL players who are having chronic brain injuries. And not only the athletes, the professional athletes, but let's talk about our sons and our daughters who are playing soccer and football and getting head injuries to where they're finished and they're still teenagers. That's wrong. We've got to change it. Next slide. Then we started product placement, okay? Back in the day, you know, most people, when they thought of pot, it was like, okay, it's a bunch of like ground up, kind of sort of grassy looking stuff, you know, sticks and stems, seeds, you know, it wasn't much of anything, but it was in a Ziploc bag and so forth. So I got a call from this show called Wilfred. And it was a friend of mine's brother that did it. And he said, hey, look, yeah, I heard you had cancer. That's really sucks. But I also hear you have a marijuana garden. I'm like, yeah, I do. He said, I'm starting this new show. And he said, I want to hire you as the marijuana expert to do all the set design and to make sure it looks like a real dispensary. We literally built a dispensary within the sound stage itself. And I said, well, what's the show about? I mean, you know. And then he shows me a picture like that. I'm like, what is this? He said, okay, Elijah Wood's character has bipolar disorder. So he has a mood disorder. He uses cannabis, and he sees this dog that to everyone else looks like a cute little Yorkie. But to him, he's a swearing, cussing, pot-smoking dog, and he's just lazy. So the whole story was around that, and I thought, you know what? I'm a little wacky myself. I've always considered my insanity to be part of my charm. And I thought, you know what? We could really do something with this. The products may not exist at that point, but we created the products. And I started creating all of the products that I thought would work. You know, topicals for chronic pain, whether you have a bad back, whether you have psoriasis, it works for that. Anti-aging products with CBD. There were lines of that. We made every single product that we could think of. We got focus groups together and we asked people, what kind of product would you like to see? And we built it. We literally built the industry within a soundstage that didn't even exist yet. Next slide. This is another thing with product placement. We literally went on media tours. Anytime that something comes up like that, and it's what we call a media hook, and you'll have these in your communities also. Let's say in your community here in Alberta, one of the scientists or one of the local nurses or someone opens a hospice program or something for women to learn about cannabis, using it during pregnancy or whatever it is. You want to find those key opinion leaders. In my particular case, because my work was media and celebrities. That's what I did for a living. It was the only thing I knew how to do, really. But that's when I went out and, you know, I made it a point to go after Fox specifically because I felt like if I can convince Fox to agree that this is a medicine, then we win. We're on the path to winning. Next slide, please. Okay. This is another show that we did. It's all about celebrity, and again, so celebrities made it cool, and now it's mainstream. We've mainstreamed cannabis. Next slide. Next. Okay. These are some. I don't know if you guys. I'm assuming you saw all the weed covers. Almost every single mainstream magazine in the business world, whether it be Forbes, Fortune, Time, National Geographic, Wall Street Journal, New York Times Magazine, weed has been on the cover of almost all of them. That tells you just how far we've come in such a short period of time. And we've done it from the most valuable resources, and that's the people themselves. People like you, building companies, talking about your success stories, talking about your dreams and your visions, and your own personal experience with cannabis, whether it be you're using it with a loved one or whatever. And that's how you start to build your own personal brands, and that's how you start building your companies, and that's how you start finding funding. And you work it. You work it through social media. How many people in here have social media accounts? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Okay, every single one of you, if you want to get into this industry, keep in mind, we cannot advertise. We cannot advertise. All we can do is use social media and word of mouth to get our products out there. And that's what you have to do. If you are not on social media yet, you need to get on it. You need to get on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, et cetera, and tell the stories about people in your community and the people that you're investing in. Or if you have a new, let's say you have an edibles company. I met this beautiful young lady who was sitting over there, and she was talking about the edibles that she made. I can't see her now. But it was really inspiring because you could tell that she was just so passionate, and you could tell, like, they really taste good, too. And that turns the stereotype, right? Next slide, please. Sarah Silverman. Remember Sarah Silverman? Don't you love a girl that pulls out her vape pen on the red carpet at the Oscars? Vape pen sales went through the roof. I just love her for doing that. Next slide, please. Okay. The vaporizers. The Oscars are part of my favorite time of the year. Why? Because we get to put the goodie bags together backstage for all the celebrities, you know, and we actually get paid to do it. So I designed these vape pens. They were 14 karat gold with pave diamonds, emeralds, and rubies. and we had them there, and it was like literally the talk of the town, and it was outrageously successful. So more media, more media, more exposure, more exposure, more exposure. And this was all about the time that cannabis, everyone was talking about it now. And that's why it's moving so quickly, because we are saturating the market with education, knowledge, and it's interesting to people. Next slide, please. More stories about all the celebrities going into the cannabis industry. All of the celebrities I started working with 10 years ago, it's like everybody wants in. I get calls every single day from people like, I want in. What do? I just want to attach my name to a product that I believe in. And that's how the USA has gotten to it. Your path is going to be a little bit different. Next slide, please. Willie Nelson. Who doesn't love some Willie Nelson? Of course, we all knew he was a cannabis consumer, and his product is actually very good. This also gives you some different ideas as far as packaging. You know, would you expect your drug dealer, quote unquote, to have beautiful packaging that looks like it comes from the Whole Foods Corporation? I mean, it's beautiful. Next slide, please. Peter Thiel. How many people know who Peter Thiel is? Okay. Peter Thiel was the investor from the Silicon Valley that changed the course of history as far as the cannabis investing world. Peter Thiel is the man behind PayPal, and we kind of lovingly call him the PayPal Mafia because he started that group with a bunch of kids up in Silicon Valley, and he's a multi-billionaire. Peter Thiel put close to $80 million into the very first investment hedge fund in the sector. Peter Thiel has so far built the most successful companies in the United States. That's very important. In the investor world, one of the things about cannabis is it's very much a Me Too philosophy. A lot of people don't have the guts to go out there and do it first, but if somebody else does it, like a Peter Thiel, everyone's like, if Peter Thiel is investing, then this cannabis stuff must be real. I mean, he's a smart man, he's a billionaire. This changed everything. Next slide. They acquired the Marley brand. It was one of the biggest brands available at that time. Next. Marley, PayPal founder, first big investor. He also invested in the fund with the guys from Yale. And they've been investing very, very heavily in technology. When the last gentleman was up here and was talking about why didn't someone think about home delivery for pot, that's what they did. We came up with a technology called Ease. It was basically Uber. I'm sure you've all heard of Uber, right? It was Uber for pot. Now they're worth billions of dollars. Next slide. Tommy Chong. I'm just going to go through real quick. These are the celebrities that all have current celebrity brands and that are really killing it in the market. Next slide. Bethany Frankel. Bethany Frankel started a skinny girl line of cannabis that literally does not give you the munchies and helps you lose weight. Next. That's me. Next. Kelly Clarkson. Kelly Clarkson has her own brand of cannabis, and she's getting very heavily involved in the market for not only people her age, but for kids. Next slide, please. Chelsea Handler. Who doesn't love Chelsea Handler? I mean, she's amazing. One of the things that I really love about the cannabis industry, and one of the things that I find most valuable when I'm investing in something, again, it's the people. And I love the fact that she lives such an authentic life. Do you have any idea how valuable it is to lead an authentic life where you don't have to hide your lifestyle? You don't have to worry about what people think because you know what? You're your own person. You're a badass bitch, and you're going to teach the world that this is how we do it, and this is how we change the world. Pardon my French. I got a little bit of a potty mouth. Next slide. Oh, and Chelsea just started her own line of products, too. She just hired a whole bunch of growers. Jane Fonda. Who would have ever thought that Jane Fonda smokes cannabis and at 77 years old? Next slide. Bill Maher. We know him, right? Next. Wiz Khalifa has his own brand, obviously, which caters to a totally different market. He caters more to the urban market, the blunt market that mixes tobacco and cannabis. Next, Tommy Chong. He has like, I think he has about 120 different products now that he licenses. Next, Kevin Clark. He actually just had a heart attack. I guess he stopped using cannabis, but he has his own line of products, and he also started his own line of dispensaries as well. Next slide. Who doesn't love Snoop Dogg? Snoop Dogg has a media company. It's called Mary Jane. It specializes in cannabis media, so all of the latest news in the cannabis world, from the companies to the people and the patient stories, and it's actually quite good. They have a couple of shows that are video demonstrations also, like cooking with cannabis and how to make tinctures and how to do that sort of thing. Next slide, please. What's the next big thing? One of the things that we're working on right now is First Nations groups. I'm part Cherokee. I'm very proud of my Native American ancestry. And the way history is passed down in my family, my great-great-grandmother was left behind in what they called the Trail of Tears. And that's when the Cherokees were forced off of their homelands and shuffled out to federal territory out in the middle of nowhere. And a lot of them died off. My great-great-grandmother stayed. She became a maid for one of the rich families in town, and that's how my grandmother has a relation to this. And my mother's family, they were French aristocrats. So I'd like to think that I have the best opportunity to show what life is like from two totally different worlds. But what's happening on Native American reservations is, keep in mind, they don't have to follow the rules of everybody else. Anybody know why? They're sovereign. They are sovereign. That means they have their own laws, their own structure, and they can do whatever they want without the federal government or the provinces getting involved, unless obviously they're trafficking or doing something illegal. As long as they're within the state which encloses their reservation or band, they're safe. And you know what? It's about time. Because my personal opinion is, I think Native Americans have gotten shafted. And I think the government did it to them. And it's wrong, and it's time to give back to those communities to help them rebuild their families and jobs. Next. These are some of the people that I work with, some of the tribal elders. I am a trained medicine woman as well, learning a lot with natural homeopathic-based medicine and a lot of Indian medicine, which most people don't even practice anymore because they don't speak the language. There are several tribes and bands that still speak their own language, which I think is really cool. I love learning from elders. There's something about America I think is really odd is we don't cherish our old people and our grandparents. You know, in other cultures, they're moved into the house and they're taken care of with love and compassion until the end. They aren't shipped off to nursing homes. And I love learning from all of these people and all of the things that they have learned in their history because you know what? They are the Americans. We are the immigrants. Next slide. What's next? You'll see in this picture, we have a $600 million funding facility right now. I have the good fortune because I do so much television. It's not that I'm that smart or that spectacular. It's like, I really believe in what I'm doing. And I'm on a mission. This is a very personal thing to me. It's a legacy project. I want to see cannabis completely legalized and no longer in prohibition during my lifetime. I am 58 years old. I just had another surgery. And they took out 70% of my liver, and I'm still here. So I'm not going anywhere. Cancer. We still need to do a lot of cancer research. They are finding that there are different cannabinoids. Oh, I got to wrap it up. Anyway, this is the last slide. They're finding that there are different cannabinoids that heal all different kinds of cancers. It's not a one drug does it all. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for hearing my story. Create your own stories, build your own personal brands. Get out there and network, and before you leave this room, make sure you get everyone's phone number and business card. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for that. Hello. Thank you very much, Cheryl, for that talk. A round of applause for Cheryl, for those of you that enjoyed the talk. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Please feel free to provide feedback to any of us that were involved in, at the front there. And we'd like to thank you for coming out and supporting the show. Thank you.